Okay, what was it?
Look at the shiur is gone.
Oh no.
No pressure.
All right. Okay, so we are back to Mishlei 15:16. Tov ma'at b'yiras Hashem u'me'otzar rav u'mehuma bo. Better a little bit with or in fear of Hashem than a great treasury or treasure and confusion or tumult or crookedness or turmoil in it or with it. Our questions were, what is the decision-making scenario such that these are the two decisions? Two, what about the other permutations? So what about otzar rav with yiras Hashem, and then, or me'at with mehuma bo? Why aren't these mentioned? And what if the otzar rav didn't have mehuma, like just a stam otzar rav? Would this still be true? Three, better in terms of what? Four, what does yiras Hashem mean in this context? Oh, you know what we didn't say? Oh, yeah. I just, hold on. I just made this out of order here. Better in terms of what? How is it better? And how do we know? Five, what does yiras Hashem mean in this context? And we had a little drop-down menu there, which we'll go back to. Six, ma'at of what? And why doesn't the pasuk specify? Seven, what does ma'at b'yiras Hashem mean? And then how does yiras Hashem qualify to ma'at? Eight, what's the subject of the pasuk? Is it yiras Hashem? Is it mehuma? Is it wealth? Is it something else? Nine, what is mehuma? 10, what is otzar rav? What is in the otzar? What constitutes rav? 11, why does it mean, what does it mean for the mehuma to be in the otzar rav? How does one qualify the other? 12, what is the relationship between tov and yiras Hashem? 13, is this a big and important question, is this a sliding scale from me'at all the way to otzar rav, and each half is true to a degree on that spectrum? Or is the problem uniquely with otzar rav? And maybe you could also say, is the benefit uniquely with having me'at? Yeah, I think you can make that argument also. The nafkamina case is, what if you have an otzar which is not rav? Would that partake of the problem, but to a lesser degree, or would it not partake of the problem at all because the problem is specific to otzar rav? 14, how are these two opposites? Is mehuma being characterized as the opposite of yiras Hashem, and if so, in what sense? 15, what is the difference between this idea and the idea of ezehu asher samech b'chalko, or the previous pasuk about leiv? What is the previous pasuk? Kol yimei ani rayim v'leiv tov mishtei tamid, right? 16, what is the chiddush beyond yiras Hashem versus wealth? 17, who's the intended audience? Okay, so we had a handful of interpretations. Yeah.
Just on that, it's funny how the previous pasuk said the ani has a bad life, and now we're saying that it's better to have.
That's a good question. Let's add that question, even if we don't answer it. So, how do we reconcile this with the previous pasuk, which implied or which said that the ani has a bad life?
I understood that.
Yeah, me too. That was a couple of weeks ago, so yeah. All right, if maybe we can look it up. Okay, so first of all, just in terms of refreshing our memory here, yiras Hashem can mean three broad things, and I think everything falls into this. Yiras Hashem could be adherence to halacha slash midos perfection slash Torah slash whatever, and I think that the most appropriate synonym is yiras chet, because it is tied to some sort of transgression. Second level is yiras shamayim, or yiras Hashem, in the sense of fear of consequences or awareness that you live in a world governed by cause and effect and lawfulness. I think yiras shamayim is a good phrase that corresponds to that. And then three is yiras Hashem in the Rambam sense of awe based on God, a knowledge of God and His universe and what your place is there. So those are three broad things. So then we had Isaac's idea, which I'm actually going to go right to the meforshim to support Isaac's idea. I think this was the most common idea in the meforshim here. So let's just start off with Metzudas David, who says at the bottom, Tov me'at yoser tov me'at hon haba b'yiras Hashem u'v'yosher. So better a little bit of wealth that comes through yiras Hashem and uprightness. So that's like, I think what our scroll was going off of, better a little bit gained through yiras Hashem. Me'otzar rav ubo mehumas kol b'nei adam, and in it is the tumult of the voices of people, soakim al ha'oshek asher bo, who are outraged or crying out about the I always forget the best translation for oshek that's the most all-encompassing, cheating, right? Like I know there's a technical halachic definition. What was it?
Yeah, holding back wages.
So that's the technical halachic definition, right? I think the way it's used in general, like oshek, is like any like monetary wrongdoing. Cheating. I think cheating is probably the best thing we have in English. Yeah. Okay. And then Rashi elaborates. Yeah, I know we're doing Rashi. don't panic. Rashi just says it a little bit clearer. Me'otar rav mehumabo kol bnei adam tzoakim chamas. So the people are crying out at the robbery. Shenasa oso otar begezel v'chamas. That otar was accumulated through gezel and chamas. Kmo v'ra'u mehumos rabos besocha v'ashukim b'kirba. We all know Amos 3:9. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. So I read this and I was thinking, like, what's a good example of it? Any examples jump to mind of this phenomenon of like people yelling at you for robbery when you're really rich? Through gezel, yeah.
Oh, well, I guess it's
Isaac has the right to say this, by the way, but yeah, go ahead.
well, it's not clear whether it's justified yelling or not.
Yeah.
Like today, almost everybody yells at everyone who's rich.
Exactly, right, yeah. So Isaac, what particular example were you going to say, I hope?
I was going to say CEOs, but Amazon, I feel like it's a...
Amazon, right? So Jeff Bezos, right, is I think people, I don't think people, I mean, I do agree with that people view rich people as inherently like evil. I don't think people say that about Bill Gates, meaning they might not like him because he's rich. I don't think they say that he built Microsoft through like cheating and destroying lives, but people do say that about Amazon. They say that because of the way they treat their workers. They say that because they effectively eliminated like, smaller stores and, whatever. So even if it's not true, I mean, I'm not taking a stance of whether it is or is not true, but like, that's, you got to think that is going to affect their ability to enjoy their wealth. I'm sure Zuckerberg is the same way, like, I was listening to a podcast about that recently about how, he is like a lot of rich people try to give away all of his money, but no amount that he does is going to like change the way that people view like how he got there, so that's an interesting phenomenon, as opposed to, let's say, can we find an example of someone who is universally recognized as getting a lot of money through doing good? I don't know if such a thing exists.
Warren Buffett?
I don't know if people call that doing good, because I think people associate him with capitalism, which they automatically brand as evil, I don't think they view him as evil, like in terms of his conduct, and he does live a modest lifestyle, but I don't
think anybody really makes money without.
I know. I know. It's hard to, right.
Money is
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. Not a lot of non-profit, CEOs.
You can't make money if you're not making
Yeah,
profit.
exactly. Yeah, right. So that is, I think, one aspect of it. And then if it's not in your packet, but the Ho'il Moshe says it the way that Isaac initially said it. And again, I'm not holding you to this, Isaac, but I am supporting what I heard from what you said, which is, Umahuma hakol hahomet believe kol adam pachos o yoser umochicho im aven v'tarmis paulo. So I think this is talking about like the voice of conscience. Okay, the voice that roars or cries out in the heart of every man to a lesser or greater extent and rebukes him if his act is one of wrongdoing or deception. Okay. And I think that fits in what we were saying about, like, if you're a total sociopath, this is not going to work. But if you have any sort of moral conscience, then it is going to eat at you in a way. Yeah.
Are you understanding Rashi and Substack to say, even if it's only a perception, it's better to have Ma'abir Hashem, or only if it's
I think Rashi and Metzudas David are talking about if you actually accumulate wealth through that, but I'm drawing from the perception example to show how strong this point is. Like, I don't know if a person is in a society like ours where making wealth is inherently deemed evil, I wouldn't say like avoid it, but I would say factor this in, because
right,
people are gonna exactly, yeah. Yes.
So, at a certain point, like, practically, if that is just how society views it, and I understand you have to take this into consideration, but, so, like, what's the message? I know that is the message, but how far do you take that? Or
So it's a good question.
I can't verbalize my question, but like, it's like,
Yeah.
at a certain point, just look, that's just the way it is. Just
Okay, so how would you answer Ariel's question? What do you do if you're in that situation?
maybe just that. Just
Just to be clear, you're talking about the perception case, right? Not the actual.
I'm just saying,
not the actual like Hamas and
if you're
Gaza,
not-
right?
if you're really not a Hamas,
Yeah.
like you're just a good guy, and people just view it like,
Yeah.
okay, look, you can't please everyone. That
Right.
would be
So
my
to a
opinion.
certain extent, that's true, but I don't think that means it's an all or nothing deal. Yeah, David?
I think one practice, like recognizing that that's what's happening and psychologically then reflecting on, okay, well, this is something that's external to me. This isn't, they're telling me I'm an intrinsically horrible person. Think about it.
Yeah.
Recognize that that's like what's pushing you. And you're not actually a horrible person. Hopefully that can help it sit a little bit better.
Right. So there's certain self-talk that you would engage in to combat that.
Oh, but
What
he
else?
knows he's a good guy. I'm saying he knows he's a good guy, but that's the perception. Like, but what is he trying to fix?
I think I would not underestimate the power of everyone telling you you're evil. I know it's easy for us to sit here and say, well, if everyone told me, I just wouldn't care. I don't know if you can, so easily tolerate that. So what I would say, just as an example of this, is, something that a lot of celebrities do: don't read the news. Meaning minimize exposure to that voice. Or here's another thing: is be aware that you have to prepare your kids for this. Right, because the people are automatically going to assume that your kids are going to be like nepo baby, or not. That's not nepo baby. But what do you call them? Spoiled, or like what do you? Yeah, entitled, or like what do you call the people who are like I don't know, like with the silver spoon in your mouth? What are the thing is so you have to prepare your kids for that. Another thing is I think you can minimize ayin hara. Right, you can do a lot to do that. There's a factoid that I heard when I was in 10th grade. I think it was a barrel wine lecture, and I've never looked it up to make sure that I wasn't misremembering it. So just take this with a grain of salt. That there was a Jewish community in Morocco for a very long time, and I guess at certain points in history it was very affluent. And the way that, so imagine back Lawrence, okay, right? So a place like that, mansions and such, and they made a takana in the community. You could build as big of a house as you want, but you have to build a giant wall in front of it so no one can see it, and so that was so there are ways that you can minimize the perception of wealth. I mean, we know, I'm not going to name names, but we know people in this community who are extremely wealthy, but you would not be able to tell it by looking at their house or their lifestyle, so it's, I think there are things you can do to minimize ayin hara. I also think that there are people who give tzedakah in private, which we generally say is good, but it's possible that someone who is in a Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos type position, I think it's actually better if they give as publicly as possible, because it's a kiddush Hashem, not that they're trying to be mekadesh Shem Hashem, but in the sense of being mekadesh the derech Hashem of tzedakah and mishpat, and using their platform for that. And if they're getting attention anyway, at the very least, when people see that they're known for philanthropy, then again, Bill Gates is a good example of this, is that people know that he is trying to get rid of all disease, and it's very hard to say oh, you're evil for using all your money to get rid of disease. So you can give tzedakah in a way that does attempt to counteract this perception as much as possible, and use your platform for promoting those values. Yeah.
I do think though, just nowadays, especially Bill Gates, something like that, like you said, but also it's so hard because everyone knows you have wealth nowadays because the internet.
Yeah. Right.
Usually got through some company or something. It's very hard to
right.
put that wall up and
Yeah, it's a different world we live in now. Yeah, that's true. I wonder if it's possible. I wonder how possible it is if you, on your way up, for example, Mark Zuckerberg did not know that Facebook was going to get as big as fast as it did, and so I think he probably just found himself in a position where he's I'm a billionaire as a 20-something-year-old, so I wonder if you are the more conscious you are building your way up, I just wonder what steps you can take to minimize it from the public eye. I just don't know.
And I think what you said about Bill Gates, how he does that's probably the best approach once you're in that situation.
Right.
I'm curious, is that something you should strive for, or is that a and that's what you should?
Right. I mean, I think that there's a tension between what's best for your midos. We did this. Hold on. Was anyone, Isaac, were you here when we did the levels of tzedakah and hilchos matnos aniyim and talked about the tension between what, there's the 10 levels and the best, hold on a second here. Yes, right. Yeah, you were there.
I wasn't.
So if I ask you, what's the highest level of tzedakah?
Doing a job.
Yes. Okay. Right. So what's the other answer that people might fall into thinking is the best level of tzedakah?
Alone.
They give it privately.
Yeah, the double blind, right? Okay. So I think we talked about how. I just want to reference this instead of just trying to remember it. It's in 10 where he goes through the levels, or is it in 9? Shmona malos yesh b'tzedakah zola malam mizo. So there's 8 levels in tzedakah, one greater than the other. We're not going to dwell on this, by the way. Mala gedola she'en lamala mimeno ze hamachazik biad Yisrael she'mach. Okay, someone who strengthens the hand of a Jew who has become crushed, literally, but impoverished. V'nosin lo matana o halva, and he gives him a gift or a loan, o ose imo shutvus, or makes a partnership with him, o mamsi lo malacha, or finds him a job, kadei lachazek es yado ad shelo yitztarach lebrios v'lo yishal, to the point where he's not dependent on people and doesn't need to ask. Malzen emar v'hechazakta bo ger v'toshav v'chayimach. You shall strengthen the hand of, you shall strengthen him, the sojourner and dweller, and he will live with you. Klomar hachazek bo shelo yipol v'yitztarach, meaning you should strengthen him so he doesn't fall and become needy. Okay, then pachos mizeh hanosin tzedakah l'aniyim v'lo yada l'mi nasan v'lo yada ha'ani mimi lakach. You give tzedakah to the poor, and you don't know who. He doesn't know who gave, and you don't know who you're giving to, right? So in terms, what we talked about, I think, was in terms of your midos, I think it's actually going to put you at greater risk for giving someone a job or a loan, and they know who you are. Like your ego becomes involved. You know, the other person is also maybe going to feel indebted to you in a way that he wouldn't feel indebted if he doesn't know where it's coming from. And so but the thing is that the higher level of tzedakah is to do that, right? So there's a tension between like what's good for your midos and what's good objectively in terms of tzedakah. So I think it's not the exact same thing here, but similar here is that like, I think you have to decide like, what do I need in terms of my midos and my experience? And then what is objectively good for the world? And, I don't know if there's like a single answer. Right. Yeah. Okay. So that is a support for Isaac's approach. Okay. Then we had Ariel's approach, which was better to have a little bit of wealth with Mishlei decision-making type of yiras Hashem than a lot of wealth without it, because you don't know how to make intelligent decisions. If you don't know how to make intelligent decisions with your wealth, it won't do you any good and you could jeopardize it. So that's like the idea of, I've heard, I don't know if this is the Kuzari, but that one of the reasons why the request for knowledge is first in the Bakashos of the Shemona Esrei. I mean, I think it's first because that's the only true good, but I think someone says it's first because all the other goods you're asking for are no good unless you have knowledge to accompany it, because either you won't be able to like obtain it, or if you obtain it, you won't be able to use it. Yeah, Sean?
Yeah, I wanted to add like a furtherance of Ariel's idea.
Yeah.
I mean, Ariel is just talking within the negative of if you don't know how to spend your money,
Yeah.
it's going to come with a bunch of negative qualities to it. But I would even say that perhaps in terms of a yiras Hashem framework, that you're going to enjoy your money more too. So
Right.
it's not just that
That's true.
you're going to have these troubles, but I think it's a further contrast of you're going to actually appreciate and value your money and get your money's worth out of your money. Much more so if you have.
That's a good point. And I'd say that in the Mishlei micro sense, of the sense that you'll make decisions that make your dollar go a longer way, qualitatively and quantitatively, but then also in a Koheles way, which is that you will not be seduced by the belief that wealth makes you happy. And that's going to change the way you relate to wealth as utility for like enjoying things as they are, as opposed to like fueling some sort of infinite insatiable fantasy of like, I'm going to be wealthy and then I'll be happy. Yeah. That's good. Okay, so let's transition from there into Rבינו Yona, which is not exactly what Ariel was saying, but I think it is related. So Rבינו Yona says, Tov ma'at, Tov lo la'adam liyos lo mamon ma'at b'yiras Hashem, v'lo gezel v'chamas. Sorry, that's the rid. I'm reading the wrong place. Rבינו Yona. Tov ma'at b'yiras Hashem me'otza rav u'mhumabo, homi shuhu yare Hashem yisparach v'yisale, yismach b'chalko v'yistapik b'ma'at asher lo, v'lo yisave b'yisronos. So anyone who is a Yare Hashem will rejoice in his portion and be content with the little that he has, and not yearn or lust after excess. And v'yetiv es levavo b'yiras Hashem yisale af im anihu, even if he's poor. Tov lo kimishtetami. Then it's as good for him as it is a constant party, and that's a reference to the previous pasuk. Right. So
that just like what Ezra was saying.
That's what the question I was gonna raise, is that what's the difference between, what is this idea adding to the normal Chalko thing? So this is obviously, this is a whole big topic, but I just want to like at least give us a direction here. I think there are two types of sameach b'chalko. Okay, maybe we talked about this when we did the last Rבינו Yona. Hold on, wait, I need to look at the old. We did, right? Two types of sameach b'chalko. Mishlei 15 TC first half. Oh, at the end. I might also be mixing it with Pirkei Avos. What Rבינו Yona says there. So Rבינו Yona on this last one, so the pasuk was Kol yimei ani ra'im v'tov lev mishteh tamid. All the days of the poor person are bad, but the glad of heart is a constant party. Rבינו Yona says, Rבינו Yona says, Bir she'ein tov lev b'chlal masha amar Kol yimei ani ra'im ki tov lev aval pishu ani. Oh, so that was how we answer the contradiction between this and our pasuk, right? Meaning it's not that being poor inherently is bad. It's that being poor is going to be like a default that it's going to be bad. But if you are tov lev, hine tov levavo mishteh tamid. Okay, so he doesn't elaborate. Well, what we said last time, I think, is there's two types of sameach b'chalko. Okay, I'm going to go really heavy, really fast. There's sameach b'chalko in Auschwitz, and then there's sameach b'chalko in like having enough money to learn and do mitzvos. Okay, so Rבינו Yona in Pirkei Avos on sameach b'chalko, I think says, and in many other places in Pirkei Avos, he says, as long as you have enough money to provide for your family, to learn Torah and be involved in mitzvos, then that's sameach b'chalko, okay? But then there's the other sameach b'chalko, which means no matter what your circumstances are, you're capable of accepting reality. I think those are two different like types of sameach b'chalko perfection to have. And obviously they're related, but I think you can cultivate, like you can be a Buddhist monk and cultivate the ability to be content and to be present with what you have, even if you have insane ideas about what a human being is. And I think that you can cultivate the idea of focusing your wealth obtaining on standards that serve your avodas Hashem, but you would fall apart in Auschwitz. Like I don't think those two go hand in hand. I think you need to work on both together. So the question is here, when Rבינו Yona is talking about sameach b'chalko, I think he means since he's combining with yiras Hashem, he's saying that there is a certain type of sameach b'chalko that comes from yiras Hashem, which I think means in the first definition of yiras Hashem of like, if my values are, I want to be able to keep mitzvos and learn Torah, so then instead of having your standards of how much money you make set by society or by your taivas, it'll be set by what do I need to be able to live this lifestyle, and then you'll be able to be happier with what you have there. So the question, though, is what is the second half saying? Because Rבינו Yona did not comment on that, right? Yeah, right. So what do you think Rבינו Yona is saying in the second half? What would be the mahuma? Yeah, David?
I'm not sure this is what he's saying. This is a little bit of a different idea. But so far as, I think he just, like the pasuk being about what you're taking security in and taking security in something that will be more secure. As much as there is like a initial, like Yer Hashem sounds like a scary thing, and it is a scary thing, then that is going to provide more tov to a person than what I think we naturally lean into, which is this otzara. But the more that you lean into it, the more confoundedness, the more lack of security you're going to have, and the bigger it gets, which you think is going to give you more and more security and more comfort, it's actually going to wind up being more and more disoriented. Okay,
so I like that idea of mahuma being insecurity, because I think in Kisavo, that's like the context in which it's like I don't know exactly what it means there, but the sense you get from reading all the pasukim is like you're just in this chaotic existence of like panic and bad stuff happening. So you're saying, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying before I go on, is that
I could say it also in a Mishlei sense.
Yeah.
It's just suggesting to lean in, like at the outset, lean into this thing that is scary, this Yer Hashem.
Yeah.
And think about those, and really it's math, but think about these scarier ideas first, accept those instead of leaning into what you would initially go to which is the wealth and finding security in that, because that's going to wind up.
So I feel like maybe I don't know what you mean by scary ideas.
And so far, I mean, okay, maybe scary is not the right word, but
well, and then the reason why I think
Sure.
your intuition is onto something is because I think if you're casting the second half of the pasuk as insecurity,
Yeah.
so then this overall subject would be about where you're getting your security from
Yeah.
in terms of wealth and your Hashem. So I think like maybe scary is the wrong word, but I think you're not off. I think you're onto something there.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think that they are unpleasant ideas to think about. So recognize that is not how you made this style.
Yeah.
Is not a pleasant thing to think about, at least at the outset. But I
Yeah.
think the more you think about that, the more you will get this benefit. And not if you were to actually have all the maybe this otsarav, that's going to wind up giving you more insecurity than you would have had to.
That's very interesting. So let's just dwell on that for 1 second here. So what is the type of insecurity that comes from the belief that you are the cause of your wealth?
Yourself really insecurity.
Yeah.
You're worried that you can keep it up.
Right. So I do think that it's a funny double-edged sword, right? Because you would think that the guy who believes that he made all of his wealth is going to feel more secure because he views himself as in control. But there is a on some level, I hope, he recognizes that he's denying how much stuff is outside of his control. And so he has to like maintain this like internal and external facade of like, I'm the one who's in control of everything. And that's going to lead to like an opposite sense of total insecurity that he can lose everything. Isaac and then Sean.
Yeah, I think that feeling of humility, it's not a constant feeling of like, oh, I have the skills to make this. I think that's not a constant feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've seen this great meme of it's like a metronome, and it's one side it's like, you know, I'm fantastic, I deserve a promotion, and I'm terrible, please don't fire me.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, and like I think when the person suffers any sort of setback or let's say negative feedback or anything like that, then they're like, oh no, you know, like I thought it was like I can make this, but I'm not going to be able to continue to sustain this.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good mouthful for this. Right.
Yeah. It like calls the whole status of wealth into question.
Yeah. Sean?
Yeah, so I like what Devin's saying.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's what we're getting Yona saying.
Okay. Fair enough.
I would focus on the fact that he says lo yitav b'yitrono.
Yeah.
Which is how he's defining this samach b'chalko type
Yeah.
phenomenon. So I would say the opposite of that is somebody who is not satisfied and wants more.
Right.
And by wanting more, I would say that definitionally, that means that you're not satisfied, you're not secure in what you have. And so there's an insecurity because you think that you need more.
Right.
And that's what's causing all these troubles. So even though you have a bunch of stuff, because you don't have this yiras Hashem, you want more. And that wanting more is what's going to produce this insecurity that's going to result in.
So that's very, very interesting, because the way that I was understanding David is it is talking about an actual insecurity rooted in reality, meaning you don't have the power that you think you have. And the mehuma is coming from being in conflict, trying to deny that insecurity. But what Sean's saying is that the insecurity is illusory, or it's self-created. You're creating insecurity by setting up impossible standards to obtain, and then that's going to keep you constantly turbulent. Yeah, that's good. That's a good idea. Okay, I did not read the Meiri, but I want to, because I'm okay. Let me. I'm gonna not predict what the Meiri is gonna say, but you know, for those who are new, so the Meiri learns every pasuk on 2 levels. Okay, there's what he calls the derech nigle and the derech nistar. So, you know, the exoteric and the esoteric meaning. My approach to the Meiri is derech nigle is it's about everyday decision making to obtain like success in the you know, physical world, or in the, you know, in everyday decision making, whereas the derech nistar is applying it to matters of the soul, like learning usually, or something like that. Okay, so what I was going to think is, you know, I've been wanting to. I mentioned that the you know, the Rambam defines yiras Hashem as being in awe of God through your knowledge of mostly of the universe. Okay, so let's try to predict this. Okay, so what is the Meiri maybe going to say? So better a little bit of knowledge that's framed in the context of Yiras Hashem than an Otsar Rav of knowledge with Mehuma in it. So what would that mean? I just want to see if we can come up with an idea for that. Like that's how we would read it, but what would that mean? Yeah, Moshe?
You're saying like an intelligent person who, I guess, focuses on the right things, or sorry, not as intelligent person who focuses on the right things, meaning they may not have as much quantity of knowledge.
Yeah.
But they have knowledge in, let's say, either areas of God or areas of how the world works. But they mean like street knowledge, but not so much book knowledge.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one would be someone who I guess either has a lot of technical knowledge, but they're confused about, what their purpose is or.
Okay. I think that is definitely a good approach in line with this. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there could be like two different approaches. One is like, the quality versus quantity of knowledge. Like if you're, you may not have like, like kind of what Moshe was saying, like a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
Like the capabilities of like knowing how to think.
Yeah.
And that's, one way versus the other is like, like you're just lacking that quality and you have no idea what to do.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say I think those two approaches categorically either the Yiras Hashem and the Mehuma are in the knowledge itself,
Yeah.
versus the process by which you obtain the knowledge. I think so.
Second.
Yeah.
Approach.
Okay, go ahead.
That has to do with more like I don't know if it's I think it has to do with more of like your midos.
Yeah. Okay. Good. That's that's probably what the Meiri is going to say, but yeah.
Yeah. So like the first half is you have a little knowledge, but you're not like gaivadik about your knowledge. You're not like
right.
You're not boasting about your knowledge.
Yeah. Okay.
Versus like, and I think that this idea came to because I know someone like this.
Yeah.
And like this guy.
I see him every day in the mirror. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
In the mirror, but so he has like immense amount of knowledge, but he just can't listen to other people. It's impossible, and like he just has a massive ego, and like it's pathetic.
Okay, so I assume the Meiri is going to say something more along those lines. I associate to Moshe Rבינו at the Sneh, V'yomer Anochi Elokei Avicha v'Elokei Avram Elokei Yitzchak Elokei Yaakov Vayaster Moshe panav ki yareh mehabit el ha'elokim. So Moshe hid his face because he was afraid to look at God, and I think there's a chazal that says I think it's a Gemara where it says that because of Moshe turning his face, then he was zocheh to have the glowing face. When he descended from Har Sinai, meaning that he was zocheh to get I think they break it into three things. There were three things Moshe did here that exhibited like a humility in how he approached knowledge. And he was zocheh to like panim el panim and like the kikaran or panav, etc. So let's see what so I was going to say that my guess was along those lines is if you approach knowledge with humility, both intellectual humility and midos humility, meaning that you don't go beyond your level, and you also are, with each knowledge you get, you're using it to appreciate what your place is in reality, okay, versus a gaiva or kavod oriented approach to knowledge where you're constantly skipping steps or like thinking that you're great because you've accumulated a lot of facts or whatever. So you're going to end up in a state of mehuma intellectually because you're going to have, gone too far too fast, and you're going to have questions and specos and difficulties, and and then midos wise you're going to be messed up because you haven't had a basis of midos perfection. All right, so let's see what the Meiri says, and then we'll stop for today. So the Meiri says, we're going to do all of it. Hanigle shetov ladam ma'at hon b'yiras Hashem ratzalom b'hi zaher b'his kabtu b'gezel b'chamas. So same thing as Metzudas David and Rashi. Mi'ota rav umhumo ratzalom oshik rash v'gezel mishpat v'tzedek. So quote from Koheles. O nefarish tov ma'at shlo yisbatel mikol v'chol milimud haTorah. So better a little bit in a way where you don't abstain from learning Torah. So I think that's talking about you are earning less money, but you're still learning Torah. So you're getting a lot of money, but you're not learning Torah. Bittul Torah is the great turmoil. Okay, yeah. So you can think about that. I mean, I think we've talked about this a lot in our yeshiva, but okay. So now here's the derech nistar. Let's see what he says. Tov ma'at yedia b'derech hamechkar. Interesting. So better a little bit of knowledge through firsthand investigation. Okay. Biyiras Hashem, Ratzalomar, im ha'amanas hadvarim derech Kabbalah. Okay. Along with belief in principles based on tradition. So in other words, you're relying on the Masorah, but you're also investigating firsthand to verify it. Me'otzar Rav, then having a great treasury, Ratzalomar Hasagas Yedia Gedola B'derech Machkar, a lot of firsthand philosophical knowledge. Ubo muhuma umuvucha umine harisa ukfira. But with it, there is a lot of confusion, or of confounding and confusion, and types of harisa is like breaking through into areas that you're not ready for, and then kfira is denial. So that's listen to Rabbi Zimmer Shiur of
which one? The Torah is actually on?
No. Something about like
I think it's the Torah against free thinking, something like that.
Maybe that, or I think he has one about like about not being philosophers, like we're not philosophers.
Oh, first the Jew, then a philosopher.
First Jew, then a philosopher. Yeah, right. So I think that's the that would be the approach there. Yeah. All right. So different than what we said. I think what we said is still good, but yeah. Okay.
Maybe he has some feedback on that idea, and like you're writing the same thing over and over again.
All righty. Have a good day, everyone.